This is a University of Otago podcast.
Hello and welcome to Otago University Vote Chat 2011. Vote Chat is a series of conversations with electioneering politicians and MPs. It's a chance to hear what all the parliamentarians and election candidates have got to say when they come to Otago University. It's their chance to tell us why we should vote for them, what they believe in, and what makes them tick. So the idea behind it all is to have the politicians come here, but not just give them a stage and tell them to speak for 30 minutes, as so often happens during the election campaign, which can be pretty boring. Instead, we're having a conversation. So we're trying to experiment a bit here, do something a bit different. And so we're doing this in front of a live audience here, and hopefully they will interact as well, and they will cheer the MP or boo them when they disagree, and jump in with a few questions. Generally, I think in New Zealand, audiences during campaigns tend to be a bit too reserved, a bit too quiet. So I'm encouraging a bit of heckling, a bit of questions from the floor, and I will go to them at various stages to get those questions. Luckily, I'm joined today by Finn Dwyer-Cunliffe. He's our assistant interviewer. He'll be stepping in occasionally with his own questions and also facilitating some questions from the audience, but especially also monitoring the Twitter feed, because there's a lot of people hopefully following this on Twitter. They can use the hashtag, which is OUVoteChat2011, and they can ask questions, which Finn will then put to our guest, and they can give reactions to what she's saying. And we've also got an official politics department Twitterer or twit in the audience that will also be recording for the record what our guest is saying. Okay, so today we're lucky enough to have the MP for Dunedin South, Claire Curran, here joining us. I'm excited about having Claire here because I think she's a particularly interesting Labour MP. A lot about her really embodies the current state of the Labour Party. I think she's a very modern MP. She comes from an interesting background, has that background in journalism, PR. She's worked in the union movement, and incredibly, she rolled the incumbent MP for Dunedin South back in 2008. So she's a tough battler, and I'm looking forward to some of her strong and controversial views today. So welcome, Claire.
Thank you. Okay,
so people want to know what makes you tick. Why did you get involved in politics, and why the Labour Party? Do you come from especially going back to your early time, do you come from a political family?
Well, like most New Zealanders, you grow up when there's politics around the table. Politics in my household were sort of a mixture. I've got a mother who was sort of swung from one to the other, but my dad comes pretty much from Irish peasant stock, and that's where my Labour roots are really. And it's all about justice and injustice, and I've got a bit of rebel Irish blood in me, and I'm it's sort of like you can't do anything about your genes, and I reckon I'm on a mission, and that's why I'm in politics. I didn't really mean to get into politics or to be an MP. I always knew I'd be political, but it's sort of like something you can't help doing.
Okay, so what other politics have you been involved with prior to being an MP?
Well, I joined the Labour Party in Australia actually. I've been a union member since I was 15, so that's where it started. Yeah. And I've always been a unionist first, because I come out of the Labour movement. Right. And
so you were working when you were at school, I guess, if you're 15, a unionist at 15.
Yeah.
What were you doing?
I got a job as a cleaner at Waikerie Hospital in Ward 10. And then I worked after school as a cleaner, and then when I left school and went to university, I worked in pubs.
Okay, which ones?
The Robbie Burns.
Yeah.
And in Dunedin, I worked there part-time for ages and then full-time, and then I went to Nelson and worked in the Hotel Nelson, which is now defunct. And when I moved to Australia, I worked in pubs. So
Okay.
I always figure that if I lose my job, I can go back to working in pubs.
Okay, well I was going to ask you, when you were a student, where did you drink? You know, What were you like as a student? Were you
I-
one of these like, well, David Cunliffe was here a few weeks ago, and I asked him about his grades, and he said he was pretty much A plus student, and I checked up, and yeah, he was telling the truth. So
no,
what about you?
I wasn't an A+ student. I think I was a pretty unremarkable student, really. But the thing about me is that I learnt how to think and how to argue, and a passion for learning new stuff, and I kind of became a student of life, really, and student of how we tick as a society, which is why I studied anthropology.
Okay.
And I'm fascinated with what makes us human.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so...
Where did I drink? I drank at
Yeah.
the Captain Cook, of course.
Okay. That stage had upstairs and downstairs, didn't it?
Yeah.
And probably no...
Great bands on a Friday night.
Okay. Do you remember any, or any in particular that you
Argus.
followed? Argus? Okay.
Mother Goose. Well, they were sort
Okay.
of a wee bit before my time. Although my first boyfriend was the sound technician for Mother Goose.
Okay.
And my sister went out with a drummer.
Okay, so you were into the band scene.
Well,
bit.
a little bit, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so what else did you do at university? Oh, you did history, didn't you?
I did history. Michael Cullen actually taught me history.
Ah,
He claims to remember me, but I really don't know why, because I wasn't very remarkable.
okay. Was he influential, do you think, in terms of your political, I don't know...
Not so much
future?
at university, although I loved his teaching, because, I mean, he's just a great speaker, and he's witty, and he brings things to life. But no, anthropology was my thing. I went on to do an honours year at Victoria, and then I became a journalist so that I could continue to ask questions and people would have to answer them.
So you did a course in journalism, or you... Oh, okay.
No.
It's quite unusual these days.
Hmm.
And you went straight into the trade. So that was what, the Nelson Evening Mail?
No, I worked on a small independent paper in Nelson, and then I went to Thames and worked on the Hauraki Herald and the Thames Star, which doesn't exist anymore, and then I went to the Nelson Mail.
Okay. So how many years in journalism?
About 4.
Okay. Well, we'll get back onto the media because I know that's one of your passions soon, but tell us about the drinking culture, because as Dunedin MP you know that at least in Dunedin North it's seen as quite a problem with young people. It probably is in Dunedin South, I'm sure, as well. What's your feelings? Is it a problem? How do we solve it? Are couch burnings a problem?
Well, they become problems every now and then, and yeah, you know, drinking behaviour generally across society is a problem. The thing that bothers me is that we've made it into a young person's issue, and it's not.
Okay.
It's actually an issue that crosses right across society, and we all have to take responsibility for it. So what really bothers me is how, you know, the whole discussion around alcohol and, you know, changing our society in that way seems to be focused on raising the drinking age, and that somehow that's going to solve everything. Well, it's just simply not.
So I'm getting the sense that you're in favour of keeping it at 18.
I am.
The purchase age for...
Yeah.
Okay.
I think there's a lot of other things that you could do, though. Communities need to take responsibility for it. And basically, it's like anything, you know, your behaviour is modified by community tolerance for it. And local government, you know, providing licensing to outlets, you know, that all night, allowing dairies to sell alcohol.
Okay, so you're in favour of some reduction of the liberalisation of
I am,
alcohol?
and I'm also in favour of looking really closely at the minimum price issue and how it's sold in supermarkets and how it's
Sure.
used as a loss leader.
Okay. Some people would say that perhaps as a Labour politician you'd be, you know, going into the whole black budget of 1958 sort of stuff again, of, you know, doing things worse for your core constituency, the low paid that, you know, rely on being able to buy cheap alcohol.
Well, I'm sitting on a select committee at the moment which is looking into the price of milk, which actually is more important in terms of trying to, you know, reduce the cost of living
Sure.
issues for many people. So that's a staple food. I don't consider alcohol to be a staple food. And,
But people should be allowed to enjoy themselves.
absolutely
it's an
they
important part
should,
of our
which
society.
is why I think that I would never support raising the purchase age, because I think it's a decision that you make. But I certainly don't think, I'm not in favour of making it cheaper. I think it's something that, I think that many companies use it as a way of drawing in young people, encouraging them to binge drink, and then holding up their hands and saying, oh, it's got nothing to do with us.
Okay, but a lot of people clearly benefit from cheaper alcohol, so they
yeah,
might be
but
unhappy.
they're actually not people's health and not people's and it's the big companies that basically are benefiting from it, because they're they're reaping large profits from maximum audiences and very targeted campaigns.
Okay, so what about drugs? So you're fairly liberal on alcohol. What about drug reform? Do you think there's any case for reforming, perhaps making drugs legal?
I think there's a case for looking at that for personal use.
Want to go any further? So you would support the legalisation of things like marijuana?
I support the legalisation of marijuana for medicinal purposes, but I think you've got to have a proper piece of legislation in place around that.
Okay, but for recreational purposes, not?
I think that with recreational use, I think we should have a discussion, and I think we should potentially look at making it decriminalising for certain amounts of personal use. I don't think it's a huge big deal. I think that once you look at the trade in it and in any drug, then that there's an issue. But I do have problem with the criminalisation of people for small amounts of personal use.
Okay, I'm aware that we're not being very interactive here, and you guys out in the audience are being incredibly quiet. Does anyone want to come in with a question? Or Finn, have you got any questions coming out from the Twitter sphere?
We have one just on the alcohol drug situation. Would you support increasing the tax on alcohol?
I'd support measures that are aimed at looking at the minimum price of alcohol, which I think is where we need to be addressing the debate around price rather than tax.
Okay, any other views? Anyone disagree? Ashley?
Just going back to the recreational use of marijuana, have you ever used marijuana?
I have.
I'm wary of getting into personal questions too much into your personal life, but do you still use it?
No.
No. Okay, but you drink?
I do.
Okay. Recreationally, I guess? Or for so drugs, no, but okay.
I like a glass of wine.
Okay.
And occasionally a small whiskey.
Whiskey and wine, okay.